as night settles in and the world begins to quiet. There's a certain stillness that invites the mind to drift toward questions often pushed aside during daylight hours. It's in these slower, softer moments, when distant traffic hum becomes a lullaby and shadows stretch long and gentle across the room, that stories from the past take on a different weight. The tale of Project Blue Book begins in such a setting, not with the intensity of flashing lights or dramatic revelations, but with the quiet tension of an era defined by both wonder and worry. This was the age of the Cold War, when the sky was no longer just a canvas for stars, but a frontier for technology, secrecy, and the unknown. People looked upward not only to dream, but to anticipate, to wonder what else might be there besides satellites, aircraft, or drifting clouds. In the late 1940s and 1950s, Americans found themselves living in a world where the boundaries of possibility were shifting rapidly. Jet engines, radar systems, and nuclear capabilities emerged almost overnight. The sky, once a peaceful dome, became a space of strategic importance, watched by soldiers, scientists, and civilians alike. It was in this atmosphere of constant observation that the earliest reports of mysterious objects began to capture the public imagination. Not every sighting was dramatic. Many were simple, fleeting moments, glimmers of light, strange shapes, silent movements. But together, they formed a pattern that couldn't be ignored. People felt torn between curiosity and caution, between a desire for answers and the fear of discovering something unsettling. When the Air Force launched Project Blue Book, it wasn't presented as a mystery-solving endeavor, but as a practical, almost routine task. Investigate unidentified aerial phenomena and determine whether they posed any threat. Yet beneath that official mission lay a deeper, more human story. Investigators weren't just collecting data, they were stepping into the emotional worlds of witnesses. Pilots who had flown thousands of hours, yet saw something they couldn't explain. Families who watched lights glide silently across their towns, and radar operators who trusted their instruments more than their own eyes. Each report was more than a document. It was a moment of vulnerability from someone trying to make sense of something extraordinary. The psychology behind these encounters plays a quiet but powerful role. Nighttime sightings, especially, carry a kind of isolation that intensifies perception. In darkness, the mind becomes more attentive, more alert to movement and contrast, more prone to lingering questions. Pilots describe the night sky as both vast and intimate, a place where distances can be deceiving and small anomalies can feel monumental. Civilians, too, often saw these events while alone or with just a few others, moments that became etched more deeply because they broke the predictable rhythm of everyday life. This script draws from those accounts not to sensationalize them, but to explore the very human reactions behind them, the way uncertainty settles into a person's memory long after the sight itself has disappeared. The Cold War context adds another layer of complexity. Suspicion and secrecy shaped how people interpreted anything unusual. A strange light could be a foreign aircraft, an experimental U.S. test, or something truly unknown. Government departments operated in a constant state of caution, which meant that even harmless phenomena required thorough examination. Yet that caution also created gaps, moments where official reports concluded one thing while witnesses insisted on another. Those contradictions didn't just deepen the mystery, they fueled it, giving rise to debates that would last for generations. It's within those spaces between explanation and experience that the intrigue of Project Blue Book truly lives. As we begin to explore the cases found in the Blue Book files, it helps to settle into the mindset of the people who first encountered them. Imagine pilots flying alone at high altitude, surrounded by a darkness so expansive that even a small flash of motion can command their full attention. Picture quiet fields and highways where witnesses experienced unexpected lights passing overhead, leaving them stunned in the stillness of a night. Consider radar operators watching blips move in ways that defied conventional aircraft behavior, wondering whether their instruments were revealing something extraordinary or simply misleading them. These moments are not just historical footnotes. They are windows into the intersection of perception, technology, and mystery. Throughout history, people have sought meaning in the sky. Ancient cultures told stories of celestial beings, travelers from distant realms, and lights that guided or warned. While Project Blue Book approached the sky with scientific tools and military discipline, the underlying sense of wonder remained. Even the most skeptical investigators acknowledged that some files resisted easy answers. And it is in those unresolved spaces, those moments where facts and mystery overlap, that this journey finds its heart. The stories you are about to experience are rooted in real reports, real documents, and real human reactions. They offer not only historical insight, but also an invitation to relax into the unknown, to drift gently into a place where questions don't need immediate answers. As the night deepens and your breathing slows, allow the soft weight of these stories to guide you. There is no urgency here, no need to solve anything. Just a gradual unfolding of events preserved in archives and memories, carried to you in a calm, steady voice. The mystery of the sky has always been a quiet one, felt more than understood, wondered about more than explained. And in that spirit, we will take our time, moving slowly through each case, letting the details settle like stardust. For now, simply rest in the knowledge that every mystery begins with a moment of noticing, a pause, a breath, a question whispered into the night. In the years following World War II, the United States found itself standing at the edge of a rapidly changing world. Science was accelerating at a pace no one had seen before, and technologies that once belonged only to dreams were becoming realities. Jet aircraft could climb higher and faster, radar systems could scan the skies with unprecedented precision, and new political tensions were rising across continents. In this environment, the sky became not just a place of wonder, but a place of deep strategic importance. It was amid this shifting landscape that the military began to receive a growing number of reports describing lights, shapes, or objects that didn't fit any familiar pattern. Some were vague, others startlingly detailed, and many came from individuals trained to observe the world carefully. This steady stream of sightings created both curiosity and concern, enough for the Air Force to take official notice and establish an organized effort to study them. Before the program became known as Project Blue Book, two earlier investigations laid the groundwork: Project Sign and Project Grudge. Project Sign, created in 1948, initially approached the strange aerial reports with an open mind, even entertaining the possibility of extraterrestrial origins. Some members of the team were genuinely intrigued by the consistency and credibility of certain sightings. However, this openness did not last long. As political pressures mounted and fears of foreign aircraft intrusions grew, Project Sign was replaced by Project Grudge, a darker, more skeptical effort focused less on discovery and more on debunking. In many ways, Grudge reflected the emotional mood of the era: anxious, defensive, and unwilling to admit uncertainty. Yet despite the shift in tone, the sightings did not stop. Reports continued to flow in from pilots, radar operators, law enforcement, and civilians, making it clear that dismissing the phenomenon would not make it disappear. By 1952, the Air Force realized it needed a more structured, stable program, one that could handle the volume of reports and provide consistent analysis. This led to the creation of Project Blue Book. Unlike its predecessors, Blue Book was designed with a clear framework for how reports would be received, categorized, and evaluated. Each case was recorded, assigned a classification, and reviewed by analysts who worked to identify the most likely explanation. Sometimes the answer was straightforward: a misidentified star, an aircraft reflecting sunlight, a weather balloon drifting silently against the wind. Other times, even with multiple witnesses and clear descriptions, the conclusion was simply unknown, a label that represented the limits of available information rather than a leap toward extraordinary explanations. Blue Book walked a line between scientific inquiry and bureaucratic responsibility, tasked with offering clarity to a public that was becoming increasingly fascinated by what might lie beyond the known sky. The people who worked within Blue Book often found themselves in a delicate position. On one hand, they had to respond to the expectations of the Air Force and government officials, who needed to maintain public confidence and avoid unnecessary panic. On the other hand, many investigators genuinely wanted to understand the truth behind the most puzzling cases. This tension created a unique atmosphere where curiosity and caution lived side by side. Analysts approached each new sighting with tools of logic and science, checking flight paths, examining atmospheric conditions, reviewing radar logs, and interviewing witnesses. At the same time, they had to acknowledge that not every detail could be neatly explained. Human memory, especially under stress or unusual lighting, could play tricks. Radar systems, though advanced, were still susceptible to anomalies. And the sky itself had countless natural phenomena that even experts struggled to fully understand. However, Project Blue Book was never just about identifying misinterpretations. It was deeply rooted in the psychology of perception, the cultural context of the era, and the growing interplay between secrecy and speculation. Many witnesses reported their sightings during nighttime hours, a time when the senses sharpen and the world feels quieter and more intimate. Pilots flying alone at high altitudes often described a sense of heightened alertness, where even small movements of light could become deeply significant. Civilians encountering something unusual in the sky carried emotions into their memory: awe, fear, confusion, or simply wonder. Blue Book investigators recognized these psychological elements, and while they sometimes attributed sightings to perceptual errors, they rarely dismissed the sincerity of the witnesses. In fact, many of the program's most compelling cases came from people whose training made them unlikely to misinterpret what they saw. The broader culture of the 1950s and 60s added yet another layer to the unfolding mystery. This was a time when science fiction was blooming, when stories of space travel and extraterrestrial life captured the public imagination. At the same time, distrust of government secrecy was growing. The combination of curiosity and suspicion meant that every official explanation, no matter how grounded, fueled fresh theories among civilians and researchers outside the military. People wanted to believe there was more to the story. And in some cases, Blue Book's conclusions did raise questions. Why were certain reports closed with minimal investigation? Why did some explanations feel incomplete or overly convenient? Even officials within the Air Force occasionally disagreed on how cases should be classified, leaving room for ongoing debate. Despite these conflicts, Project Blue Book played a significant role in shaping how the world came to understand unidentified aerial phenomena. It created one of the most extensive collections of reports in government history, offering a rare glimpse into the unfolding relationship between science, secrecy, and the human desire to understand the unknown. Many of the program's findings were later declassified, revealing not only the process behind the investigations, but also the complexities of trying to make sense of unusual events with limited tools and imperfect information. These files help us see the investigators as humans, thoughtful, curious, and sometimes unsure, rather than distant, authoritative voices. As we prepare to step into the individual cases documented within those files, it's helpful to remember that the purpose of Blue Book was not simply to solve mysteries, but to explore them with as much clarity as possible. Its legacy lies not in definitive answers, but in the careful process of gathering information, weighing possibilities, and acknowledging the boundaries of knowledge. In that gentle space between certainty and wonder, the story of Project Blue Book finds its true purpose, inviting us to approach each case with the same calm curiosity that guided the investigators themselves. In the early months of 1948, when commercial aviation was still young and military pilots carried a sense of both duty and adventure into the sky, an event unfolded that would become one of the earliest and most tragic mysteries tied to the Air Force's UFO investigations. Captain Thomas F. Mantell was not an inexperienced flyer or someone easily shaken. He was a respected pilot, a World War II veteran, and someone deeply familiar with the changing nature of aviation. On January 7th, he and several other pilots were flying routine missions from Godman Army Airfield in Kentucky when ground staff received reports of a large, unidentified object drifting through the sky. Multiple witnesses described something shiny or metallic, something unusually bright, moving at what appeared to be a steady, deliberate pace. Initial estimates suggested the object was extremely high, far above typical civilian or military flight altitudes for that time. The airfield's control tower, scanning the distance, could see something too, just enough to confirm that the reports were not a simple misunderstanding. Mantell and his fellow pilots were asked to investigate, a request that seemed ordinary at first. Pilots were accustomed to tracking unknown aircraft, especially during a period when airspace security was a constant priority. As the pursuit began, the tone inside the cockpit shifted from routine to confusion. Mantell radioed back that he saw something above him, something large, something that seemed to be metallic and reflecting sunlight. Yet it remained strangely difficult to judge, appearing both close and far at different moments. As Mantell pushed his aircraft higher, he entered altitudes that required oxygen support. Without supplementary oxygen systems, pilots risked losing consciousness, something Mantell was understood to know well. Even so, the chase continued upward. He was determined to identify what he had been sent to pursue, and his focus remained locked on the bright object rising ahead of him. Communications from Mantell eventually began to fade. His final transmissions were unclear, but the last coherent report described the object as enormous, something that did not look like any conventional aircraft of the era. Moments later, Mantell's plane began to descend uncontrollably. It spiraled downward until it crashed into a Kentucky farm, resulting in his death. The tragedy shocked the Air Force, not only because they had lost a skilled pilot, but because the circumstances leading to the crash were tied to something that remained unidentified. The official report initially labeled the sighting as Venus, suggesting Mantell had mistaken the bright planet for an aircraft or object. But many investigators, both military and civilian, disagreed with this conclusion. Venus, while bright, does not appear metallic, nor does it give the impression of an object reflecting sunlight at close range. It also does not rise or maneuver in the way Mantell described. As public interest grew, the Air Force revisited the incident and proposed a second explanation: a skyhook balloon. These massive, high-altitude research balloons were capable of reaching extreme heights and were often classified at the time, meaning many pilots, including Mantell, would not have recognized them. Skyhook balloons could appear shiny or reflective, especially when caught by the sun, and they drifted in ways that matched certain witness reports. This explanation made the case seem more grounded and manageable, aligning the event with known technology rather than something extraordinary. Yet even this theory had gaps. Some radar operators claimed the object's behavior didn't match what they typically observed with these balloons, and several witnesses maintained the object was moving faster and more purposefully than a drifting atmospheric device. Psychologically, the Mantell incident demonstrated how uncertainty in stressful conditions could escalate situations rapidly. The desire to identify an unknown object, combined with the natural determination of a skilled pilot, may have contributed to Mantell pushing himself beyond safe operating limits. At the same time, the reports from the ground and the statements from the pilots who accompanied him suggest that something was truly present in the sky that day, something that was not easily dismissed. These contradictions created a delicate tension, one that fed into the early stages of Project Blue Book's investigations. Mantell's death served as a reminder that encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena were not just intellectual puzzles. They carried very real risks, both physical and psychological. The cultural impact of the event also reverberated across the country. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines, sometimes exaggerating details or hinting at extraterrestrial involvement. For citizens already navigating a landscape filled with new technologies, Cold War anxieties, and rapid scientific progress, the idea of a pilot dying while chasing something unknown in the sky captured imaginations deeply. People began to ask what kinds of objects could be flying at such heights, and whether the government fully understood what was happening overhead. The mystery of Mantell's final chase became one of the foundational stories that shaped public curiosity about UFOs for years to come. In the context of Project Blue Book, Mantell's case became a study in the complexities of interpreting eyewitness reports and the limitations of aviation technology at the time. It demonstrated how quickly a routine mission could transform into a mystery filled with conflicting interpretations. For many investigators, the case remained a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that aviation, despite all its advances, still operated beneath a vast sky full of possibilities. As the story of Project Blue Book continued to unfold, Mantell's pursuit stood as a quiet, haunting beginning, illustrating how deeply the search for answers could intertwine with human courage, uncertainty, and the timeless pull of the unexplained. On certain nights in the early 1950s, the skies over Lubbock, Texas, seemed to carry a secret that few could explain. Families, students, and professors alike began reporting unusual formations of lights moving silently across the dark horizon. Unlike a single sighting, this event involved multiple witnesses, each observing luminous, V-shaped patterns that danced across the sky with a precision that was both captivating and perplexing. The phenomenon became known as the Lubbock Lights, and it soon drew attention not just from local residents, but also from scientists and Air Force investigators who were determined to understand what so many people had seen. What made these lights particularly remarkable was the consistency in the observations. People described the same shapes, the same number of lights, and similar movements, despite being in different locations and experiencing the sight independently. The repeated appearance of these formations suggested that this was no ordinary meteor shower or misidentified aircraft. It was something that challenged conventional understanding. The academic involvement in the Lubbock Lights case lent it a rare credibility. Several professors from Texas Tech University took their observations seriously enough to report them formally, documenting the timing, direction, and behavior of the lights. Their careful notes included details that went beyond simple eyewitness testimony, adding a scientific lens to a mysterious occurrence. The fact that educated, trained observers could not offer a mundane explanation caused investigators to take notice. Radar readings from nearby installations offered little additional clarity, but the witnesses' consistency across various locations and times hinted at a phenomenon that, at least for a moment, could not be dismissed outright. This blend of personal observation and academic rigor set the Lubbock Lights apart as one of the early cases that pushed Project Blue Book to reconcile public reports with the limitations of available technology. From a psychological perspective, the Lubbock Lights demonstrated how humans respond to shared mystery. Witnesses often described a feeling of awe mixed with uncertainty, a recognition that they were seeing something unusual, yet not fully comprehensible. This state of heightened attention, particularly under the calm and isolation of nighttime, made every movement of the lights seem deliberate, purposeful, and almost alive. Some researchers noted that group observation can both validate and amplify perception. When one person points out a light or pattern, others are more likely to notice it as well. Yet, the accounts from Lubbock were remarkable for how independently they aligned, suggesting that this was not simply a case of shared misperception, but a genuine phenomenon experienced by multiple observers. The cultural context of the early 1950s also shaped the way the Lubbock Lights were received. The United States was in a period of intense technological optimism, but also deep anxiety. The space age was just beginning, the Cold War loomed over everyday life, and the public had been primed by science fiction novels and films to imagine extraterrestrial possibilities. Against this backdrop, sightings like the Lubbock Lights were both thrilling and unsettling. Newspapers reported the events with a mix of fascination and caution, often highlighting the scientific credentials of the witnesses to give the story weight. Communities began to discuss the lights openly, some organizing casual sky-watching gatherings in hopes of catching another glimpse, while others speculated on the origins of the mysterious formations. Project Blue Book approached the Lubbock Lights with cautious thoroughness. Investigators considered conventional explanations first. Were these birds reflecting streetlights, misidentified aircraft, or atmospheric anomalies? While some observers suggested that the lights could have been illuminated birds, the patterns and precise formations reported were unlike anything ornithologists typically recorded. Air Force analysts also compared the accounts to known aircraft movements, but the speed, coordination, and silent passage of the lights seemed inconsistent with human-made machines. Despite these efforts, the official conclusion categorized the lights as unknown, a rare designation at the time that reflected both the limitations of technology and the difficulty of reconciling multiple credible accounts. Interestingly, the Lubbock Lights left a lasting imprint on both UFO culture and the public imagination. They were referenced in subsequent investigations and became a standard example of multiple witness credibility in UFO research. Photographs, though grainy, captured some of the formations and were circulated widely, further embedding the case in American consciousness. The phenomenon sparked discussions about the nature of perception and observation. How could something so clearly witnessed remain unexplained by science? Scholars of the era noted that such events were important not merely for what they revealed about the sky, but for what they revealed about human curiosity and the search for meaning in unexplained phenomena. As a story within the larger framework of Project Blue Book, the Lubbock Lights illustrate the delicate balance between evidence and interpretation. The case highlights the role of observation, the interplay between individual and collective perception, and the challenges investigators faced when attempting to apply conventional explanations to extraordinary accounts. Unlike some single witness reports that could be dismissed as error or exaggeration, the repeated sightings over Lubbock demanded attention. They exemplify the ways in which mystery can quietly unfold, leaving both the observer and the investigator with questions that have no immediate resolution, yet lingering enough to spark wonder. As night returns to quiet, the memory of the Lubbock Lights hangs softly in the mind, like distant stars or the faint glimmer of imagination at the edge of perception. It is a reminder that the sky above often carries secrets that resist immediate understanding, that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are those that invite careful attention rather than urgent answers. And in this gentle unfolding, listeners can begin to appreciate the subtle interplay of observation, skepticism, and the unknown, a balance that Project Blue Book would navigate again and again in the years to follow. In the summer of 1952, the nation's capital became the stage for one of the most remarkable and unsettling UFO episodes in American history. Over several evenings in July, Washington, D.C. was alive with unusual reports. Bright lights moving erratically across the sky, radar blips that suggested the presence of multiple unknown objects, and visual confirmations from both civilian observers and trained military personnel. What made this series of events extraordinary was the convergence of evidence from independent sources. Radar operators, pilots, and ground witnesses all described phenomena that did not match conventional aircraft or natural celestial objects. The consistency of the reports, coupled with their sheer number, elevated the incident from a local curiosity to a matter of national concern, prompting the Air Force to investigate with the highest level of attention. For Project Blue Book, this was a defining moment. The phenomena could no longer be easily dismissed or explained away. The first night, radar stations around the capital detected unidentified objects moving at high speed and executing maneuvers that defied conventional aircraft capabilities. Pilots scrambled to intercept and visually confirm the targets, often reporting glowing orbs that seemed to change direction rapidly and hover momentarily before accelerating again. Some objects appeared to split into multiple lights, then merge, as if behaving according to patterns that no human technology could reproduce at the time. The tension was palpable, both for the pilots flying into unknown skies and for the radar operators tracking the phenomena. These were trained professionals, accustomed to interpreting readings and spotting anomalies. Yet even they found themselves faced with data that resisted simple categorization. The unusual flight paths, combined with the simultaneous visual reports, created a sense of mystery that the Air Force could not ignore. The official response from the government was measured but urgent. President Truman was reportedly briefed on the events, and Air Force officials held a public press conference to reassure the population. The objective was clear: maintain calm while demonstrating that the situation was being monitored and investigated. At the same time, there was an unspoken recognition within the Air Force that these sightings challenged existing assumptions about airspace security. Radar and visual confirmations had coincided, suggesting that something truly anomalous was taking place above the Capitol. Analysts examined atmospheric conditions, the possibility of temperature inversions, and technical explanations for radar anomalies. Some experts argued that atmospheric effects could create false blips on radar screens, while others noted that such phenomena would not account for the visual sightings made by pilots and civilians alike. This tension between skepticism and credibility defined much of the Blue Book approach. Each case had to be investigated thoroughly, even when explanations seemed elusive. The psychological dimension of the Washington, D.C. sightings is equally compelling. Civilians observing the sky from their homes or streets described a mixture of awe, fear, and fascination. Their accounts often included details that mirrored those reported by trained observers, such as color changes, unusual flight patterns, and the simultaneous presence of multiple lights. Pilots reported similar experiences, a sudden impression of presence, a heightened alertness that made even minor movements seem significant. The evening skies of the Capitol became a shared stage for human perception and the unknown, a place where ordinary routines intersected with extraordinary experiences. For Project Blue Book, these reports were not mere curiosities. They were critical data points in understanding the range and consistency of unexplained aerial phenomena. Culturally, the incident reinforced the growing national obsession with UFOs. Newspapers and radio broadcasts covered the story extensively, fueling both public fascination and concern. Unlike smaller, isolated sightings, the Washington, D.C. events took place over a political and symbolic center, amplifying their significance. People began to question whether the government fully understood the nature of the objects overhead, and speculation about foreign technology or extraterrestrial visitation became common. Historians note that this period marked a shift in public consciousness. UFOs were no longer fringe phenomena, but matters of widespread attention that intersected with politics, science, and national identity. The cultural resonance of the sightings helped cement the Washington, D.C. events as a benchmark case in UFO research, studied and referenced for decades afterward. Project Blue Book's analysis of the Washington, D.C. sightings ultimately concluded that temperature inversions and optical illusions likely accounted for most of the radar anomalies, while the lights themselves were often attributed to aircraft or celestial objects. However, the program could not fully reconcile all the evidence. Visual reports and radar confirmations that coincided in time remained unexplained in some instances, leaving a residual sense of mystery. This ambiguity highlighted the limitations of technology and investigative methods at the time, revealing that even well-trained observers and sophisticated instruments could encounter phenomena that did not fit conventional understanding. It was a lesson in humility for both investigators and the public. Not every anomaly could be neatly categorized, yet careful documentation and critical analysis remained essential. The Washington, D.C. sightings also had a lasting impact on the methodology of UFO investigation. They demonstrated the value of multiple observation points, the importance of corroborating visual and instrument-based evidence, and the need to consider psychological and cultural factors when evaluating reports. Analysts within Project Blue Book learned that cases with multiple credible witnesses required particularly careful attention, as they often contained the most nuanced and challenging data. The episode became a case study in balancing skepticism with open-minded inquiry, showing how the quest for understanding could coexist with methodical, disciplined investigation. As night falls again, it is easy to imagine the skies over the Capitol during those July evenings, glowing orbs drifting silently, appearing and disappearing with no clear pattern, leaving observers both enthralled and uncertain. For those listening now, it is not only a story of lights and radar blips, but a story of human curiosity, careful observation, and the delicate dance between explanation and mystery. The Washington, D.C. sightings remind us that even in the most ordinary of places, the night sky can hold wonders that defy immediate understanding, inviting reflection, calm contemplation, and a gentle sense of awe as we drift deeper into the mysteries of Project Blue Book. On the evening of November 2, 1957, As the autumn chills settled across the plains of West Texas, an unusual sequence of events unfolded that would become one of the most intriguing cases in the history of Project Blue Book. The incident, which took place near the small town of Levelland, involved multiple motorists, a police officer, and the sudden appearance of a mysterious object that seemed to defy both nature and explanation. The phenomenon began when several drivers traveling on remote highways reported seeing a large, glowing object hovering over the road, close enough to block their path. As the witnesses described it, the object was not only immense, but also emitted a powerful light. It appeared to change shape, fluctuating in brightness, as it hovered silently in the sky. The encounters occurred under similar circumstances. One motorist reported that the lights came directly overhead, casting a bright glow that seemed to block out the stars. As he attempted to drive forward, his car's engine suddenly stalled. He tried to restart the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. Frustrated and fearful, he watched as the object hovered silently before it abruptly shot off into the distance. In a separate location, a second witness, a truck driver, encountered a similar event. His vehicle stalled, too, as a bright, glowing object appeared above his truck. The object's effect on the vehicle was immediate and consistent. Its light seemed to interfere with the truck's engine, which stopped working for several minutes. Other motorists along the highway soon reported the same phenomenon: strange lights that seemed to pulse with an unearthly power, followed by the complete stalling of their engines. What was so striking about this event, however, was the consistency of the witnesses' descriptions. They were unconnected, driving different routes, and yet they all described the same object with similar characteristics and similar effects on their vehicles. This was not a random anomaly. Something significant was happening over the plains of Texas that night. Local law enforcement was alerted, and Sheriff Clem of Levelland quickly responded, heading toward the site of the reports. When he arrived, he, too, encountered the glowing object. According to his account, the object was hovering just above the ground near a field, its light so bright it cast a shadow on the terrain. When the sheriff approached the object, his car's engine, like the others, sputtered and stalled. As the sheriff watched in awe and confusion, the object appeared to lift silently into the air and zoom away at incredible speed. Later, he would describe it as an intensely bright and massive object, and he would remark on how the incident had profoundly shaken him. Clem was not the only one to experience the strange effects. Another officer, who was with him, had the same experience of engine failure. The reports of this unusual event quickly found their way to the Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was tasked with investigating aerial phenomena such as these. The initial reports from Levelland were thorough, with multiple witnesses corroborating one another's experiences. It was clear to investigators that this was no mere misidentification or mistake. However, the question of what the object actually was remained elusive. The descriptions provided by the witnesses didn't match anything conventional. The fact that the lights affected the engines of the vehicles in a consistent way, causing them to stall without warning, was particularly puzzling. If the object were simply a plane, balloon, or known atmospheric phenomenon, why would it cause such specific interference with vehicle functions? Project Blue Book's investigation into the Levelland incident ultimately led to a conclusion that was not entirely satisfying to those involved in the case. The official explanation from the Air Force suggested that the sightings were the result of misidentified aircraft, possibly military jets or weather balloons. In particular, the Air Force leaned toward the idea that the engine stalling phenomenon was a result of the witnesses being startled or confused, leading them to misperceive the situation. Some scientists and investigators suggested that a rare atmospheric phenomenon, such as ball lightning, could have been responsible for the glowing lights, though no one could definitively explain how such an event could cause engine failures. However, these explanations failed to account for the consistency of the witnesses' accounts. Many of the people involved were highly credible, civilians with no prior interest in UFOs, as well as law enforcement officials with extensive experience in observing and interpreting unusual events. To dismiss their reports as mass hysteria or simple misperception seemed unjust. there was a level of detail in the accounts that made it difficult to simply chalk up to coincidence. The consistent interference with vehicle engines, the size and movement of the object, and the striking similarity of the different sightings across several miles of highway made this case difficult to ignore. Yet, as was often the case with many Blue Book investigations, the case remained officially unresolved. The truth behind the Levelland sightings would remain an open question, with no clear answer coming from the government or the scientific community. Psychologically, the Levelland incident illustrates how such encounters challenge not only our understanding of the world, but also the limits of human perception. In situations of stress, confusion, or even awe, the mind can sometimes misinterpret or exaggerate sensory input, and yet the similarity of these accounts suggests that something extraordinary was indeed happening. The phenomenon itself, with its striking characteristics, its glow, its ability to affect machinery, its silent movement, seemed beyond the realm of everyday experience. And yet, despite the deep mystery of it all, it didn't escalate into mass panic. Most of the witnesses remained calm, even as they encountered the unknown. The common thread among them was not fear, but curiosity. They were not looking for answers from outside authorities. They were seeking their own understanding of what they had witnessed. The Levelland sightings also speak to a cultural shift in the 1950s, a time when the public was increasingly open to ideas of the unexplained and the unknown. Stories of flying saucers, strange lights, and extraterrestrial visits had become a staple of popular culture, fueled by books, films, and news reports. This growing fascination, combined with the psychological readiness to believe in something otherworldly, contributed to the way such events were perceived. They were no longer isolated incidents, but part of a larger conversation about humanity's place in the universe. For some, Levelland was just one more piece of evidence in a growing body of proof for extraterrestrial life. For others, it was another puzzle to be solved, with scientific explanations still just out of reach. In the years since, the Levelland case has remained one of the more puzzling and captivating events in UFO history. Despite the official explanations, the consistent nature of the reports, and the involvement of credible witnesses, the truth of what occurred on that quiet West Texas night remains shrouded in mystery. For those who encountered the lights, it was an experience that would stay with them for a lifetime, a reminder that even in the everyday world, the sky above can hold secrets that defy understanding. As the mystery of Levelland fades into history, it continues to serve as a touchstone for the enduring enigma of what we see when we look up at the night sky. In the midst of the ongoing UFO investigations of the 1950s, one case emerged that would captivate the public and further fuel the mystery surrounding the unknown, an event that took place on the evening of August 21, 1965, in Exeter, New Hampshire. The story of the Exeter incident began when a local man named Norman Muscarello, along with his friend, reported seeing an immense, glowing object in the sky while driving home late at night. The object, which appeared to hover and then move erratically, seemed much larger and closer than any conventional aircraft. Muscarello's initial reaction was one of fear and disbelief. After trying unsuccessfully to alert his friend, he made his way to the police station, seeking help. He was not alone in his concern, for as he walked into the station, he discovered that several other residents had also reported seeing a similar object in the sky. The Exeter incident would become one of the most widely publicized UFO sightings in New England, not only because of the initial report, but also due to the intense investigations that followed. The police officer who first responded to Muscarello's call, Officer Eugene Bertrand, did not take the incident lightly. A seasoned lawman, Bertrand was both intrigued and unsettled by the accounts he was hearing. He decided to conduct his own investigation, which would soon add a layer of credibility to the case. Officer Bertrand himself became a witness to the object when he was on patrol that night. He reported seeing a glowing red light in the sky that seemed to hover, then suddenly dart off at a tremendous speed. This was not an isolated sighting. Several other officers, along with other residents, reported similar experiences in the following hours, all describing a large, luminous object that exhibited behavior unlike any known aircraft. The police, whose duty it was to investigate unusual occurrences, quickly alerted the local Air Force Base, and the incident caught the attention of Project Blue Book, which had by then taken a leading role in investigating such cases. Blue Book's investigation began by interviewing witnesses, including the police officers involved, and reviewing all available information. As with most UFO investigations, the official response attempted to explain the sightings through conventional means, suggesting the possibility that the object might have been a military aircraft, a misidentified star, or a weather phenomenon. However, these explanations did not hold up well in the face of the eyewitness testimony, which was consistent and compelling. The descriptions of the object's size, speed, and erratic movement simply did not fit known aircraft or natural phenomena. Psychologically, the Exeter incident revealed much about the way witnesses experienced the unknown. What set this case apart from others was not just the number of witnesses, but their credibility. Muscarello, Bertrand, and others were not simply civilians. They were trained professionals, police officers, and military personnel who knew the sky, knew aircraft, and had experience dealing with unusual situations. Their detailed and consistent accounts suggested that this was not simply a case of misinterpretation or imagination. The witnesses themselves did not immediately leap to conclusions about what they had seen. Rather, their collective uncertainty mirrored that of many others who had reported UFO sightings during this era. They were more interested in what had happened than in jumping to any extraordinary conclusions. The lack of immediate fear or panic, in fact, made the case more intriguing. These were people who approached the situation with rational minds, only to find themselves confronted by something far outside the realm of what they understood. As for the object itself, its behavior was one of the key factors that distinguished it from typical UFO sightings. It was not simply a light or an isolated flash across the sky. The object in Exeter was reported to be much larger, brighter, and more active than conventional aircraft, and its sudden, erratic movements were unlike anything experienced by the witnesses. It hovered in place for long periods, then shot across the sky with incredible speed, sometimes disappearing completely, only to reappear elsewhere. The speed and precision of its movements seemed to suggest a level of control that was beyond any known aircraft technology at the time. In fact, its erratic behavior led some witnesses to speculate that it might not have been a natural or man-made object at all. The object's behavior was one of the core reasons that the case became such a significant part of the UFO mystery, as it suggested that the object might have been from beyond the scope of earthly technology. Culturally, the Exeter incident occurred during a time when UFOs were a prominent topic in the media, but the idea of extraterrestrial visitors was still controversial. The 1960s were marked by both optimism and unease about technological advancement, space exploration, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. Science fiction was in full bloom, and stories of alien encounters were becoming mainstream, especially after the public's growing awareness of military UFO investigations. The Exeter case, therefore, occurred in a fertile cultural climate where public interest in UFOs was high, and people were open to exploring the mysteries of the unknown. However, this growing interest was tempered by skepticism. Many researchers and government officials continued to dismiss UFO sightings as mass hysteria, misidentifications, or other psychological phenomena. The Exeter incident's involvement with Project Blue Book provided both credibility and criticism. On one hand, the involvement of the U.S. Air Force lent the case a certain degree of authority. On the other hand, the explanations provided by Blue Book failed to fully satisfy either the witnesses or the public. Project Blue Book concluded that the Exeter sightings were likely the result of a misidentified aircraft or some other known natural phenomenon, but many continued to question this conclusion. The persistence of such sightings, coupled with the witness testimony and the unusual characteristics of the object, led some to suggest that Project Blue Book was not fully equipped to handle such cases. Instead of uncovering a clear explanation, The investigation left many unanswered questions, making the Exeter incident a powerful example of the complexities involved in UFO research. In the years since, the Exeter incident has remained a significant case for UFO researchers and enthusiasts alike. It is a prime example of a UFO event involving multiple credible witnesses, detailed reports, and a persistent mystery that defies conventional explanation. The case also highlights the challenges faced by both government investigations and independent researchers in trying to make sense of phenomena that do not fit within known scientific paradigms. For the witnesses involved, the Exeter incident remains an experience that defies easy answers. For those who study UFOs, it continues to be a reminder that the search for truth can often lead to more questions than answers. As with so many other cases in the history of Project Blue Book, the Exeter incident invites reflection on the nature of mystery, perception, and the uncharted realms that lie just beyond the limits of human understanding. In the years following the closing of Project Blue Book in 1969, public interest in UFOs and related phenomena did not fade. On the contrary, the mystery surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena seemed to grow even more complex and tantalizing. Though the official stance of the U.S. government was that there was no substantial evidence of extraterrestrial involvement, many continued to question the veracity of the findings and the true nature of the phenomena that had been investigated. A new generation of researchers, fueled by the continuing mystery, began to explore alternative theories and to propose that the government's stance might be a carefully crafted cover-up. These ideas gave rise to an entirely new phase in the study of UFOs, one that would bridge the gap between skepticism and belief, using both scientific inquiry and the tantalizing allure of the unknown. By the early 1970s, UFO researchers had started to take a more interdisciplinary approach. While earlier investigations, particularly those conducted by Blue Book, had focused on the identification and debunking of specific sightings, this new generation began to consider the broader implications of the phenomenon. Was the mystery of UFOs truly an enigma of technological nature, or was there something deeper at play, something beyond the capabilities of conventional science to explain? This shift in focus was marked by the growing influence of paranormal theories and alternative explanations, many of which suggested that UFOs were not simply physical craft from other worlds, but perhaps manifestations of a broader, more complex reality. The possibility of alien encounters was, of course, still central to the ongoing conversation. One of the key ideas that emerged during this time was the theory of extraterrestrial biological entities, EBs, intelligent life forms from other planets or star systems who might be visiting Earth. This notion became widely popularized in the 1970s, spurred by reports of abductions, close encounters, and sightings that appeared to defy conventional scientific explanations. Books like Communion by Whitley Strieber, published in 1987, and the wave of abduction stories that followed, brought a new layer of intrigue to the UFO conversation. The idea that extraterrestrials might be interacting with humans, even abducting them for study, seemed to be a logical extension of earlier sightings, though it was a theory that was met with equal parts fascination and skepticism. Yet, as researchers delved deeper into these paranormal theories, new questions emerged that could not be easily answered. Could UFOs, rather than being strictly physical craft, actually be part of an entirely different reality? Were they perhaps interdimensional beings or objects that traveled through different planes of existence, rather than interplanetary travelers? The interdimensional hypothesis gained traction among some researchers who began to see the UFO phenomenon not as an isolated anomaly, but as a doorway to other dimensions, spaces, or even timelines. This theory posited that UFOs were not simply extraterrestrial spacecraft, but rather visitors from parallel universes or alternate realities. This more radical view was further supported by reports of high strangeness, unexplained events that went beyond UFO sightings to include phenomena such as time lapses, strange lights, electrical malfunctions, and even physical changes to the environment. Many UFO witnesses reported experiencing a profound sense of altered reality during their encounters, with time seeming to slow down, objects shifting, or sudden, inexplicable feelings of disorientation. These experiences led some to hypothesize that UFOs were not bound by the laws of physics as we understand them, and were instead influenced by unknown forces, perhaps existing outside of the constraints of time and space. The continued mystery of UFOs also spurred new interest in government secrecy and the role that intelligence agencies might play in covering up evidence. As many former military personnel and government insiders came forward with claims of encounters with UFOs or knowledge of classified projects, conspiracy theories about government involvement began to proliferate. Some researchers argued that the government knew far more about UFOs than it was willing to admit, and that the shutdown of Project Blue Book was part of a larger, ongoing effort to keep the public in the dark. This idea was given credence by the declassification of various documents that, while not providing definitive proof of extraterrestrial life, nonetheless suggested that the U.S. government had investigated the phenomenon more deeply than previously known. The role of the media also played a significant part in shaping public opinion during this time. In the 1970s and 1980s, the popularity of UFO sightings and alien abduction stories in books, movies, and television shows helped to solidify UFOs as a fixture of popular culture. Movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., the extraterrestrials sparked public fascination and curiosity about extraterrestrial life and its potential interaction with humanity. While these depictions were fictional, they reflected a growing public interest in the idea that we were not alone in the universe. The media helped to normalize discussions about UFOs, making it easier for people to come forward with their own experiences, and giving credibility to the notion that something truly strange was happening. Despite the increasing visibility of UFO phenomena, mainstream science remained skeptical. The scientific community largely rejected the idea of extraterrestrial visitation, and many dismissed UFO sightings as hoaxes, misidentifications, or psychological phenomena. Yet, the persistence of sightings and encounters across the globe continued to generate debate. With no conclusive evidence in hand, UFO research remained a fringe endeavor, though it increasingly gained a following among a segment of the public, and among those with a deep interest in the mysteries of the universe. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the UFO debate had evolved into a more open discussion about the nature of reality itself. While many researchers continued to explore the possibility of extraterrestrial life, others ventured into more speculative territory, suggesting that the UFO phenomenon could be a glimpse into a broader, more complex universe, one in which humanity might not be the only intelligent species, but where the very fabric of existence could be far more mysterious than we can comprehend. The interdimensional and paranormal explanations for UFOs provided new avenues for understanding, though they also remained controversial and difficult to prove scientifically. As UFO sightings continued into the new millennium, the conversation shifted once again. With the declassification of more government documents and the release of videos from military pilots showing unidentified objects performing extraordinary maneuvers, the conversation surrounding UFOs reached a new level of seriousness. No longer just the subject of conspiracy theorists, the phenomenon was being treated as a legitimate mystery, worthy of further investigation by both governments and the scientific community. The legacy of Project Blue Book, then, lies not in its conclusions, but in the questions it raised. It served as a foundation for a much broader, more complex conversation that continues today. While the UFO phenomenon remains elusive, the curiosity and intrigue it generates continue to inspire researchers, theorists, and the general public alike. Whether the answers lie in extraterrestrial life, interdimensional travel, or something entirely different, the story of UFOs is far from over. As our understanding of the universe expands, so too will our questions about what we have yet to discover in the skies above. The mystery continues, inviting us to look up, question, and wonder, what is truly out there? As the years passed, the impact of Project Blue Book continued to echo in both UFO research and public interest. Although the project officially closed in 1969 with its final report, the questions it raised did not fade away. The cases investigated under Blue Book became part of the broader UFO mythology, fueling the belief that the truth about extraterrestrial life remained hidden by the government. While Blue Book's conclusions dismissed most UFO sightings as misidentifications or natural phenomena, the unexplained cases continued to stir debate among enthusiasts, researchers, and skeptics alike. Many of cases, especially those that involved multiple witnesses or physical evidence, have continued to be analyzed and re-examined over the decades. As technology has advanced, the tools available to investigate UFO sightings have grown more sophisticated, allowing for new interpretations and discoveries. The legacy of Blue Book, then, lies not only in the investigations it conducted, but also in its role in keeping the UFO phenomenon in the public consciousness. It acted as a catalyst, sparking continued curiosity, research, and speculation about the mysteries that remain in the skies, keeping alive the enduring question, are we alone in the universe? As we reflect on the vast tapestry of UFO sightings and investigations, one thing becomes clear. The mystery of unidentified aerial phenomena is far from resolved. From the early days of Project Blue Book to the modern era of UAP task forces and declassified military footage, the question of what these phenomena truly are continues to intrigue and elude us. Despite the advances in technology, the accumulation of thousands of eyewitness testimonies, and the growing transparency of government investigations, we still lack a definitive explanation. What is undeniable, however, is the profound effect these encounters have had on both our collective imagination and our understanding of the universe. The fascination with UFOs has transcended beyond mere curiosity to challenge our notions of reality, science, and even our place in the cosmos. Whether they are evidence of extraterrestrial life, advanced human technology, or something altogether different, UFOs remind us that there are still mysteries in our world that defy explanation, mysteries that continue to push the boundaries of human understanding. As we look to the future, the search for answers remains a journey not just of discovery, but of wonder, reflection, and a deepening acknowledgement that the unknown will always be part of the story we tell about ourselves.